Chapter 267 to 270. Tsunade looked out of the window of her house in the Senju compound and sighed at the sight of Kurenai Yuhi practicing her chakra control at such an early hour. Taking the girl as her apprentice was one of the better choices Tsunade recently made. Kurenai was dedicated, she had a proper drive because she wanted to achieve her dream of showing she could be a good kunoichi. That coupled with a lot of talent, and Kurenai was quite easy to teach. Fortunately, that meant Tsunade did not need to spend much time with the girl. She only needed to be steered in the right direction and showed the right exercises. Other than that, the girl would practice by herself till she dropped. Honestly, Tsunade hated holding her apprentice's hand, so Kurenai was ideal for her. After all, she was her mentor, not her mother. If she had to push her to train, then naturally, that meant the girl did not deserve her tutelage. A yawn tore out of Tsunade's mouth, causing her mood to plummet as she noticed the stack of paperwork she finished last night with her shadow clones. Rei was right. It didn't appear as much work individually, but her duties as Konoha's ruler and the Biribiri president added up to her necessary free time with her family, creating a killer schedule. Fortunately, she had shadow clones. Tsunade grinned at that thought, her mood restored. Shikaku always bothered her about her secret for paperwork. To be honest, she gave him enough hints. After all, he was supposed to be a Nara, so telling him the clue is shadows should have been enough. Alas, even after 3 years, the man simply couldn't get it. It was simply hilarious, especially since shadow clones was the only technique the Nara clan couldn't utilize well because of its immense chakra cost. Oh, they tried. The technique had shadow in its name, so the Nara clan naturally wanted to master it. When her uncle Tobirama made the technique, the Nara clan instantly tried to implement it in their combat style. Nobody ever told them Tobirama named it shadow clones on purpose. Needless to say, the Naras failed miserably. Well, figures. Tobirama made damn sure the technique spent so much chakra, a clan with innate low reserves and lazy attitude would be hard-pressed to utilize it. Nara Jonins could make shadow clones. That was not the problem. The problem was what came after that. They simply would not have enough chakra to efficiently fight with the shadow techniques. In the end, the shadow clones fell into obscurity, where they stayed even till these days. In Konoha, there were at most around 20 ninjas who actually knew shadow clone technique. And not even half of them used the technique in their fighting style. For example, Jiraiya. He knew the technique. Not because it was helpful to him in a fight. He knew it because it was safe to peek at bathing kunoichi with it. As for using it in his fighting style, that was simply asking for too much. Even with Jiraiya's chakra reserves, he couldn't waste his chakra for shadow clones. He was primarily a summoner and ninjutsu user. Both needed a lot of chakra to work efficiently. Hence, shadow clones became more of a hindrance in a fight. As such, Jiraiya seldom used the technique in an actual fight. Somehow, Tsunade could clearly picture Jiraiya getting a new apprentice who was good at the shadow clones, while the old coot would totally forget they could be used for training too. With his porn on his mind, the usage of an obscure technique like shadow clones would be the last thing on his mind. The same with Sarutobi. The man knew so many techniques. He was primarily a ninjutsu powerhouse. Tsunade doubted Hiruzen actually used the shadow clones more than a couple of times in his life. Why would he use them when it was much more cost-efficient to use a devastating ninjutsu instead? It was no wonder the old monkey had no idea they could be used for paperwork. He simply did not think about it as subconsciously. He already wrote the technique off as useless luxury that is better not used in any way because of its cost. Thinking about Hiruzen Sarutobi brought Tsunade's mind on the track towards a happier topic. Shimura Danzo. During the last 3 years, she was using the old schemer as a stress relief. Every time she was too stressed, poor Shimura would lose something. Whether it is a new ally in the political sphere, some of his hard-fought influence, or an arm. Taking away his Makuton arm was such a delight. It wasn't even hard. As a Mokuton user herself, Tsunade could simply overtake the arm and change it into a bona fide wood. After all, while it was similar to a human hand, at its base, it was still wood. Watching Danzo's arm suddenly separate from his shoulder during one of the council meetings was golden. His exasperated expression made my day. A pity the old coot is done for. Tsunade sighed. Unfortunately, she already finished with Danzo. After the man lost every way to revert the momentum against him other than actually leaving Konoha and building his power base outside the village, Tsunade decided she had enough fun. She locked his chakra, crippled both of his legs and his last arm, before she ripped out Shisui's eye from his eye socket. That eye was the only reason why Danzo had enough determination to fight back against Tsunade's machinations, despite how hopeless it all seemed. That was the entire reason why she let him keep it so long. He must have thought he could just get me under his control if he really lost all options. Tsunade amusedly mused. She didn't kill the man, however. Right now, Danzo Shimura was a permanent guest at Konoha's asylum for the elderly. The only way he could run was to have somebody wheel him out on his wheelchair, and the only way he could eat was by having somebody feed him. That was much worse than death, considering the man was a ninja his entire life. Living in such a hopeless and helpless state would be worse than torture for him. Danzo no longer posed a threat to any development she decided to implement in Konoha. Honestly, there was nobody who posed a threat anymore. Sarutobi tried whenever he found something not according to the will of fire, but he didn't get far with his complaints. After all, he was retired. His opinion no longer mattered, especially since Tsunade worked hard to get the neutral clans under her influence. Her very first target was the Kurama clan. That was an easy one. She even got Kurenai's eternal loyalty and gratitude by fixing Yakumo Kurama up and enabling the girl to be a kunoichi. That was really all it took for the clan to accept Tsunade as their daimyo. Even to this day, Tsunade is bewildered at how easy that was. From there, Tsunade went onward to the Aburame clan, which was tedious at best, since they desired recognition more than anything else. And after the Aburame clan, there was the Inuzuka clan, which really only required Tsunade to slap the ever-living daylight out of the entire clan, showcasing her dominance. Thankfully, the Akamichi and Yamanaka clans followed the Nara clan, so Tsunade didn't have to do much when these two were concerned. As for the Uchiha clan, they no longer mattered. No matter what the civilians believed, one underage boy did not qualify as a clan. Sasuke would become important only when he grows up, and even then, he would first have to become important for the village in some way other than breeding stock. Only then would Tsunade start paying attention to the Uchiha clan. Alas, it was still a work in progress. Rei forbade Tsunade from implementing many reforms in Konoha simply because her hold on the village was not yet absolute. That was the reason why Konoha lagged behind Kirigakure and Tsunagakure when it came to development. As much as Tsunade hated it, she understood the need for it. Shikaku Nara certainly suspected Tsunade's loyalties. Then again, that man was smart and lazy enough to not give a fuck while continuing to do his job. Tsunade could only imagine the shitstorm it would cause if the one who realized it was Sume Inuzuka. The Inuzuka clan would rebel in a week, tops. Tsunade dramatically sighed. Why is it so hard to find smart people in leadership positions nowadays? She sat down in her armchair and pulled out a book while creating 2 shadow clones. It was time for her clones to continue their paperwork duty. While Tsunade, Ringo, and Pakura focused on the respective villages under their command, Rei and Conan focused solely on the village on the other side. The biggest accomplishment in the last years was the finalization of the hideout network for the village. Since the village was so far away from any form of civilization, clients could not simply walk into the village to request a mission. The village on the other side was backed up by the Biribiri Company and the Uzushio Trading Company, but that didn't mean they could go on without having any profitable venture. Ray didn't make a village because he wanted to lose money. As such, the ninjas of the village had to earn their keep too, which meant missions. Missions not only brought money, but also provided an experience to the ninjas of the village. No matter how good the training of the other-sided village was, no matter how superior its ninjas were. Without proper experience, they could still be beaten by unconventional means. The problem was how to get clients, since the village's location sucked in that regard. The solution was simple. Ray and Conan simply used the Uzushio Trading Company as a middleman. The missions were posted to the Uzushio Trading Company, who was then supposed to find people for hire to accomplish the task. That was a nice and broad way of saying, for a price, we will hire ninjas for you. At the first glance, this didn't seem like a business venture that would succeed, but once one really thought about it, since the hirer was the Uzushio Trading Company, it was hard to track who really issued the mission unless the investigator went through the company that would in most cases keep quiet because it was a part of their service as the middleman. After all, if somebody is assassinated and his relatives want to get revenge, they will look for the assassin, sure, but they will look for the man who paid the assassin even more. This way, the request maker was the Uzushio Trading Company, making it harder to find the real requester. Even an idiot would realize the company was just a middleman, hence it was obvious the company in itself only handed the request to a ninja village and had nothing to do with it. It was simply a waste of time trying to get revenge against the Uzushio Trading Company that acted at most as a delivery man. This service also proved efficient when the requester is unable to leave his town, country, residence, whatever. He can simply ask the Uzushio Trading Company representative in the nearest branch of the company to make a mission request for him. The nobles and richer people usually send their employees or servants to do these things in their stead anyway. Hiring the Uzushio Trading Company will cost them, but they have assurance the request will safely get to a ninja village. It was, after all, significantly easier to hunt down one servant on his way to request a mission than an entire company. Not to mention, nobody yet discovered that the Uzushio Trading Company used transportation seals to get valuable paperwork to the headquarters ASAP. This service proved to be a very valuable part of what the Uzushio Trading Company offered to their clients. Essentially, the clients didn't care if the ninja was from Konoha or Iwa. They cared only about the results. As such, the requests that passed the initial screening by the Uzushio Trading Company ended in the village on the other side, waiting to be assigned to a team. Thanks to the extensive network of hidden outposts all over the elemental nations, the ninjas from the other-sided village could teleport to any part of the world almost instantly, creating an image of mystery around them. After the people started to realize the existence of new ninja forces, they noticed these new ninjas were simply everywhere, and nobody had any idea where they came from. Needless to say, it was frustrating to no end. The other hidden villages could only speculate these ninjas belonged to the Uzushio Gakure because the thing they all had in common was that they only did missions where the Uzushio Trading Company acted as the middleman. There were a few clever people who tried to probe the situation by trying to request a mission of hunting down the merchants of the Uzushio Trading Company while using the said company as the middleman. Yeah, that didn't go so well. Anyway, many took this as proof of the new unmarked ninjas being from Uzushio. Neither Ray nor Conan actually tried to dissuade that notion. If people wanted to think their forces were from a village that didn't even exist anymore, who were they to correct them? The ninjas from the other side, as Ray liked to call his troops, didn't wear headbands or flak jackets or anything even remotely telling they were actual ninjas. They always wore civilian clothes, ones that were heavily riddled with various seals to make them useful in combat. The entire act of wearing a headband seemed stupid, but in reality, it was not. It served as a deterrent against bandits and other ninjas. The priority for ninjas was not to fight ninjas from other nations, but to finish their mission. Ninjas generally tried to do that without getting into a conflict. Many fights were avoided simply because the attacking side saw a headband and realize that the opponents are not easy pickings, and even if they are defeated, their village would surely investigate. Rei decided the ninjas from the other side did not need that. They looked like civilians. There was no reason for anybody to attack them. And if somebody did, they were trained enough to kill their way out of the trouble. After all, only ninjas who were at the very least Chunin rank in strength could leave the village for missions. Then again, having the strength of a Chunin in the village on the other side simply meant they were eligible to get the rank of Genin. It was the entire point of attending the academy to get to that level of strength and ability. Nobody can say the academy instructors in the village on the other side went easy on the kids. Sometimes, even Rei cringed at the brutality of the training and rued the day he handed the responsibility for the academy curriculum over to Konan and, worse, Mei. The kids were in no immediate threat of dying or even staying injured. The important word there was staying, because the curriculum was made to harm the kids in a way that would force them to improve. It was a no-brainer, really. Kids were adaptable and soaked up new knowledge like a sponge. There was a reason why so many prepubescent kids became legends in the ninja world during wartime. Conan simply got the marvelous idea to simulate that kind of environment while making it safe without telling the kids it was safe. Those who could get through it became a force to be reckoned with, and those that couldn't, well, there was still the option of working for the Biribiri or the Uzushio Trading Company, where they could still get training. It would just be a very downgraded version of what the ninjas from the other side received. There were not many civilians in the village on the other side either, since most of its occupants were from ninja clans. Rei and his wives collected all over the elemental nations. That meant the kids of those people were raised to be a ninja from the start, and failing at the academy was taken as a sign of shame. Sure, Rei would love to be an idealistic idiot and let kids be kids, but he knew what kind of world he was sending them in once they left the academy. As such, he allowed the academy to take education from an entirely different side and focus on making the kids into capable killers. In Rei's opinion, it was better to be an accomplished killer rather than be dead, raped, or tortured. In this manner, the forces of the village on the other side started to slowly build up, and the service of its ninjas was becoming more and more sought after through the Uzushio Trading Company acting as the middleman. Rei stood surrounded by his wives in his laboratory located in his mansion in the village on the other side. All around them were papers with sealing arrays haphazardly strewn all over the place. Only the middle of the room contained a very complicated seal drawn onto the floor. Today was the day his long years of research will finally bear the fruits of his labor. "You have finally finished it, huh?" Conan hummed, a bit miffed. She didn't like the fact Rei was again in his research mode for the past few years. The last time he entered it, he made the artificial bijou. Sure, that brought a lot of joy to their lives and provided them with completely loyal companions that enhanced their strengths to an unimaginable degree. But the process of creating them was extremely dangerous. Conan still didn't forget Rei admitting he almost blew himself up while making the necessary seals for the creation of their bijou. So, when one pleasant morning after a lovely night of merrymaking, Rei told her he had a new important project, her sluggish and pleased mood instantly evaporated. Conan only barely managed to bite her lower lip in order to prevent herself from screaming her throat sore at Rei. Yet Conan knew she couldn't stop him. As much as she wanted to, she knew his important research projects, as he called them, were really important for their future. Whenever Rei called a project important, it meant it would either raise their strength significantly or be a preventive measure against something bad from happening. That still didn't make these important projects any safer, though. Conan could only hope Rei would be responsible enough to not actually emulate Mei and destroy himself alongside the planet because of some minor mishap. Really, sometimes I feel as if I was surrounded by kindergartners, Conan bitterly thought. Rei looked at Conan, reading her inner turmoil from her almost indifferent expression, and wisely kept quiet without answering her rhetorical question. He was well aware of her attitude to his practical approach when it came to testing his seals. Then again, he did have shadow clones. Ah, women. Why couldn't they understand that experiencing blowing yourself up was totally different than actually blowing yourself up? Anyway, Ray turned towards May. "You look quite excited," he exclaimed. "Yes, we spent years on this, and now it is finally finished." May bounced up and down, and for some reason, Ray had a hard time tearing his gaze from her vibrant auburn hair, moving up and down with her momentum and clashing with her wide green eyes full of excitement. It was only when Tsunade put her hand on the top of May's head while grinning widely did Ray finally snap out of his reverie. "Look at her," Tsunade teasingly drawled, causing May's smile to stiffen. "So excited that you are finally done, Ray. Yet I wonder why she is hiding that deep sadness she is A glint flashed through Tsunade's eyes, but May quickly turned around and put her hand on Tsunade's mouth, desperately silencing her with a pleading look. Tsunade's grin only widened when she saw an understanding glance from Conan and a raise of an eyebrow from Pakura. Ringo just glared at the back of May's head, but that was a common thing between the two redheads. As for Ray, he had 5 overly caring women. He got good at hiding things he didn't want them to worry about and discovering things they were hiding from him. After years of their relationship, that was bound to happen eventually. Even without the senjutsu-powered emotional sensing, which was becoming a kind of a passive sixth sense in Tsunade's case due to her uninterrupted continuous use of the senjutsu mode. And yes, that made it basically impossible to lie to her. Ray knew why May was sad, and why he was hiding it. Since she was his assistant for the most part, they spent a lot of time together in his laboratory, doing things that not always could be connected to his research or seals. Ray was just glad his laboratory was soundproof and actually had a bed. May could be really wild and willful when she wanted. It was obvious May knew that now the research was over. Her convenient excuse to spend time with Ray was also gone. Ray, on the other hand, knew his girls more than even they thought. Heck, he practically raised May and saw every step of the development of her mindset. It was so obvious she didn't care about the seals at all. She was passable in the craft, but she couldn't care less. Sure, the final result probably did excite her, but honestly, Ray knew she sacrificed her free time and became his assistant in order to spend more time with him, rather than due to wanting to actually help him. What Ray didn't say was that the research could be done a year ago if May didn't join. That girl knew how to play his buttons far too well, distracting him from work. And when Yugito and Yagura finally married 2 years ago and announced Yugito with a child, in the following weeks, Ray didn't manage to do much seal work, as he was deeply focused on exploring May. Fortunately, Ray's ability to control natural energy and absorb it into his body made him able to make himself fertile and infertile on command. He was not going to bring a kid into a world when there was still the threat of the Otsutsuki clan hanging above their heads. Ray also knew it was just one of May's whimsical moods. After a few weeks, she couldn't even look Ray into the eyes for a few days from shame. Deep in her heart, she didn't really want a child. She only liked the idea of that happening. Once her brain kicked in, however, May quickly realized she was not ready yet. "Just start it." Ringo sighed, tiredly rubbing her eyes. "I still have work in my forge." "Ha ha. I bet you are so cranky because you thought he was calling you to do something more enjoyable than showing off the results of his research." May butted in with a sneer. Ringo clicked her tongue at May in irritation. "Whatever. At least this way your bragging about all the time you get to spend with him will finally end, you nympho." "What was that, you weapon pervert?" A pressure suddenly enveloped the room, pressing on both May and Ringo, weighing them down while completely bypassing the other occupants. Now that made both girls quiet down and turn towards Ray in embarrassment, as if they were little kids that were just scolded. Since the artificial Biju finally matured, Ray and his wives gained a lot of perks, one of which was the heaviness of their chakra, which in turn enhanced their intent. Not unlike the release of killing intent, Ray released his irritation with a full weight of his chakra behind it at the two bickering women. It was harmless. Against them. Their bodies were enhanced to an incredible degree when fully matured Biju settled in them. The weight of Ray's chakra made them only slightly hunch over, unlike the air around them that was cracking from the pressure. I am starting. Ray decided to cut the chase, unwilling to give May and Ringo another chance to start arguing. You all have the 2 seals I gave you earlier on you? After a round of agreement, no matter if it was enthusiastic, grumbling, or muttering one, Ray sighed and kneeled on one knee, putting his hands on the edge of the seal in the middle of the room. Before his girls could even blink, the world shifted around them, becoming... All 5 women turned their heads in bewilderment as they looked around and could only think, "What the hell?" Ray just smirked, spreading out his arms. "Welcome to the outpost hidden on the other side of the moon." Conan intently looked at the massive ball of mostly blue in the distance. "So, that is our home?" She tilted her head with a difficult expression. Instantly, all 4 remaining women turned to look at it, showing either astonishment, frowns, or disbelief. Ray already informed them about the universe, space, and things like that, but accepting it was another thing. For people of elemental nations, the world beyond their continents simply may not even exist, since almost nobody tried to get there, and those who did, didn't return. Hell, residents of some more remote countries still believed the world was flat. It was really mind-boggling how differently developed certain places in the elemental nations were. Alas, now, here it was. Their home planet was right in front of their eyes. Right there, they could see the elemental nations. They had the same shape they sported on many maps. It was unmistakable. The surprise, though, came from the fact the elemental nations were but a small fraction of land visible on the planet. The reason why nobody ever returned to the elemental nations after leaving to explore is clearly visible from here. Ray started, pointing to the distance. Our home is too isolated. The closest land to the elemental nations is to the south, and even then it is, by my crude estimation, at least 6,000 kilometers away. And that is a problem. Why? I could run that far on water. May pipped in, cutely tilting her head in genuine confusion. Ray smiled at her. She always overestimated others because she had a bad habit of comparing them to herself. It was something she picked up after being trained by Ray and Conan, while having only them to measure her improvement. It's because you are not average, you dolt. Ringo snorted and rolled her eyes as she crossed her arms under her chest in a provoking manner. Before May could return the verbal fire, Ray interrupted the argument before it could even start. Yes, water walking is not too exhausting, but even then, an average Jonin can travel up to 100 kilometers on the water before he runs out of chakra, entering a chakra exhaustion state, which on the open sea would mean he would drown. He explained, even those elite Jonins and S-rank ninjas with the biggest chakra reserves back at home do not have chakra reserves to get further than 500 kilometers on water. Unfortunately, Ringo decided to continue as she had some knowledge about these matters since she was the Kage of Kirigakure. Even the ships the Land of Water has right now, and everybody knew these were the best ships in the entirety of elemental nations, can't cover 6,000 kilometers on an open sea. That's plain suicide. You gotta count the storage capacity for supplies, the durability of the ship in case it is caught in storms, and many more variables that... Yeah. Ringo shrugged. Not happening. The ship would most likely fall into pieces halfway through the journey because of storms. And then there is that, Ray added with a wry smile, the dark blue patches strewn all around the elemental nations in the radius of 2,000 kilometers. What do you mean? This time it was Pakura who asked. Doesn't that just mean the ocean is extremely deep in those places? Why should that be a problem? Ray looked around and noticed that none of his girls actually had an inkling why that would be a threat. He sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I should probably have expected this. They all grew up in elemental nations after all. How could I expect they would think outside of the box? He helplessly lamented. For one last time, Ray glanced at Tsunade, making her owlishly blink. Shaking his head, he decided in which way he would explain it. Tsunade, Ray started, what are the two energy sources accessible to humans? At first, Tsunade scrunched her eyebrows, not understanding what that had to do with it, but nevertheless, she dutifully answered, chakra and the nature energy. And what else can use nature energy, I dare say, even better than humans? Ray asked again. This time, Tsunade's eyes slightly widened. She quickly understood what Ray meant, and the reason why he asked her was that she did research on this. Animals. Most of them have a way to innately accept nature energy into their bodies, becoming what we call chakra beasts. You want to say in these dark blue spots where the ocean is the deepest is a habitat of strong chakra beasts? Conan asked in a way that suggested she found it hilarious. Ah, don't think about it like that. Ray rebuked. Chakra beasts get stronger as they age. The more nature energy they absorb, the stronger, smarter, and better they become. Naturally, Ray glanced at Tsunade. Naturally, she continued for Ray, as she understood this had to do with the results of her research. They also possessed chakra. Nature energy would kill them if their chakra was not balancing it in their bodies. They do this instinctively, and as such, they take in nature energy, improving their bodies, which in turn, in time improves their chakra reserves, which then allows them to take in more nature energy, making them even stronger in one unending circle. She summed up. You want to tell us the chakra beasts are instinctively using senjutsu? Ringo raised an eyebrow at Tsunade. No. In fact, senjutsu was based on that ability of theirs. You gotta understand, the chakra beasts are doing this extremely slowly. Senjutsu is like drawing nature energy to the limit of your body on purpose for a quick boost that is not permanent. In the short term, it provides far more power. Because you are trying to stuff the most nature energy your chakra reserves can contain, however, it is dangerous. Tsunade replied. Senjutsu being derived from that also means that while I use senjutsu, my body is slowly but permanently absorbing nature energy and is getting stronger, which increases my chakra pool. Yeah, that's why I actually started researching the chakra beasts in the first place. Summons are chakra beasts, aren't they? Pakura suddenly realized. Yeah, Ray grinned. Summons are just chakra beasts who live in an environment that is extremely favorable for them, quickening the rate of their growth. For example, Metmyoboku is said to be the best place to learn senjutsu because of the abundant nature energy there. He shrugged, hence the gigantic toads. And by the way, I think Metmyoboku is actually located in the middle of the divine mountains of the Land of Lightning. So, what? Is that why we must sacrifice chakra to summon them? May mused, causing the people around them to stare at her in astonishment at the huge logical leap. Yeah? Ray unsurely nodded. I mean, I have never studied the summoning scrolls, but maybe the chakra the summoner sacrifices is indeed increasing the summon's chakra reserves, hastening its evolution. I mean, they sure as hell do not let people use them for free, right? A bit of chakra to get a massive animal fighting for you is also a bit too far-fetched. Anyway, Conan decided to return the conversation on its track. Let's get back to the topic. Deep in the ocean? Chakra beasts? Well, you see, the source of nature energy is the planet. Even this moon, Ray tapped his foot, is a source of nature energy. It is small and weak, but it is there, deep under the surface. Our planet is producing many times more nature energy, plus the ocean is vast. There is enough space for multiple extremely strong and old chakra beasts that had centuries to grow without any natural predators and were a lot closer to the source than, for example, the summons. Do the math yourself. I see. Tsunade frowned. In the elemental nations, the chakra beasts were hunted down. Only in some special places, like the Forest of Demons and the Country of Demons, you can find relatively strong chakra beasts. Even these are quite weak, and a Jonin can easily dispatch them. What Ray is describing is a situation where these chakra beasts had nobody hunting them, and as such they were allowed to grow. Tsunade looked at Ray in astonishment. You are not trying to tell us they are as strong as Biju, are you? Now that got all of their attention almost instantly. Ray, however, just shrugged. I have no idea. All I got are the legends from the southernmost islands of the elemental nations. After all, the legends of the sea dragons, water serpents, island eater, whatever, has to be based on something. What's stopping them from coming to the elemental nations then? Pakura asked with a frown. The Land of Wind was located on the south of the mainland. If these chakra beasts decided to visit, the same thing that is preventing the Biju from leaving the elemental nations, Ray said and paused, causing the women to lean closer to him. No matter how intelligent deep down, they are still animals. They have their territories. Why do you think the three-tailed turtle stayed close to the land of water for so many years? Why did Shukaku stay in the desert despite loving destruction? It's their turf, and they simply loathe leaving it. Our world is a lot more complicated than we first thought, huh? Tsunade chuckled. She didn't expect an answer, though. You have no idea. So when a voice resounded from behind the group, they instantly tensed.